some organization working on carbon pricing.
Mm-hmm.
That is also related to the market. Some are working on the carbon market,
mm-hmm.
that's ETS. But I think WRI is one of the important organizations working on how link the central government to the subnational, local, provincial, and city government. So look, the government as the whole body can be trade. And that is a system we learned from European Union, although Europe has such kind of idea, but since the different political structure, I think China can do better than EU in this regard, since EU do not have the central budget for each member state,
mm-hmm.
but China is different.
Yeah.
China can use such kind of power to do that.
Mm-hmm. And related to this sort of stakeholder engagement, I was wondering just how, specifically for how the NDC gets written or formulated, how do the different sectors within governments or the different ministries coordinate? Because obviously, if the MEE writes a target for emissions reductions, that impacts the Ministry for Transport, the Ministry for Agriculture, the Ministry for Energy. So how do they, what's the process for interministerial coordination? Does it work well? Do they actually talk to each other? Are there sort of conflicts between the ministries?
We will see that. That is the first year to do that. In the previous, there's seldom of such kind of the system to do that. I look the carbon target at the systematic change driven force.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a change the whole system dramatically, or the whole system. Since, like you mentioned, MEE should give the target to the transportation, Ministry of Transportation, giving it to the Ministry of Agriculture, building, many ministries. So the traditionally is the central government giving the target to the local level. But how about line ministries? So that is a challenge for MEE, I think. But it is possible, and MEE is a leading agency to make the 14th 5-year plan on carbon and 2035 2030 peaking master plan. So State Council giving the power to MEE, and MEE should do that.
Mm-hmm.
And although the leading agency is MEE, but the boss is State Council. Mm-hmm. So I believe it can be happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it will happen.
But what about the previous NDC? So the INDC, how did it work there? Because obviously it's not an absolute reduction target, so it's not as critical, but even with an emissions intensity target, you still have to have coordination between the different ministries. So do you know how that process went? So from what I heard is the NDRC drafts, comes up with a draft and sends it to the other ministries. The other ministries have their own experts evaluate the draft. They send comments back, and then it goes back and forth until the draft looks, until everyone's happy with it. And then it goes to the State Council.
As my understanding, the former NDC is more relying on giving the target to the local level.
Okay.
Then the local level can reallocate it into the different sectors. Since different provinces have different resources. For some provinces, maybe they have a big chemical plant, and they can reduce energy consumption from other sectors, since they want the chemical sector more kind of a main income from the provinces. So different provinces have the different ways to reduce their carbon intensity. And there are also some cases that the policies cannot go in along with each other. For example, for last NDC, when the NDRC asked the local provinces reduce the carbon density, and the environment ministry asked them to have the air pollution control. They need to have a new devices for pollution reduction. But the pollution reduction devices need more energy. So sometimes they say, if we follow the rules of the pollution control environment, we will use more energy. If we follow the energy reduction policy, we will pollute the air. So that is some policies not going along with each other. But right now, the same ministry in charge of that. And I think, I hope that using the carbon in Chinese we call it the tire for ox nose. You know, when you lead the ox to somewhere, you just hold the tire, then that is the nose of the ox. Then the ox follow you. Mm-hmm. So carbon is just like the tire of the ox nose. Mm-hmm. Then using that tire can leading the whole system change.
Yeah. So the one thing that I'm interested in as well, there's this new, I've forgotten the name, but there's this new institution that's set up by Xu, the lead negotiator.
Xie Zhenhua.
Yeah. So I've heard that he's now head of the new institution that's meant to sort of or maybe I asked the question differently. So the question is, because the NDC process is every 5 years, and China already has sort of a process of 5-year plans, but is there some kind of institution building to deal specifically with the NDCs, where you say, okay, we're going to change, obviously it's changed from the NDRC, it's moved to the MEE. How does this reflect? Is this sort of part of a strategy for how to deal better with this 5-year iterative process?
14th 5-year plan is broader than NDC. Mm-hmm. And after the People's Congress is ongoing right now, and there's going to get approval by the 14th 5-year plan, master kind of the outline of the master plan. Mm-hmm. Then the different agency or different department of the government will make the detailed 14th 5-year plan. Mm-hmm. And Xie Zhenhua is a kind of the new appointed as the envoy of the climate change. Mm-hmm. And Mondeley is a leading kind of the international talks mm-hmm. or negotiations. For domestic issues, as my understanding, is still in the pocket of the MEE, and also mainstream all the carbon into the whole process of the environment management. Mm-hmm. For example, it's probably in EIA, Environment Impact Assessment, which is the policy before the investment get approval. Mm-hmm. There was no carbon issue in EIA law, Environment Impact Law. Mm-hmm. It's going to add the carbon into EIA, added the carbon into the monitoring, supervision, mm-hmm. and emission. Sorry.
But just briefly, because so my research is really interested mainly on the NDC, and the NDC obviously is an international, so whatever gets communicated in the NDC is what mm-hmm. gets communicated at the international stage. It doesn't have to be the same necessarily as what's in the 14-year plan. And as far as I understand it, the way that China does it is it defines its NDC. So now that there's a target of peaking by 2030, the 14-year plan will introduce some kind of